Hello and welcome to this tutorial on, this tutorial series on Dwarfputing. So we're going to go into basically, in this series we're going to do, what is Dwarfputing, what's it used for, what are the various techniques, how signals are built, etc. In this episode we're going to be focusing on signals, because signals are kind of the core component of a Dwarfputer. So to start with, signals can be emitted by either levers or pressure plates. A lever will, and there are two types of signals, an on signal and an off signal. A lever, when you build it, the first pull, so this lever, as you can see, is pointing to the right. The first pull will send an on signal, going to the left, and then going to the right again will send an off signal. Those signals will be sent immediately. So I've gone and connected up the lever to each of these things. The constructions that can receive a signal are gear assemblies, upright spike traps, floodgates, doors, hatches, bridges, and track stops. And I'll explain sort of what each thing does as someone comes and pulls the lever. So the gear assembly is currently, active, well, inactive but engaged. And as they pull the lever to the left, the gear assembly becomes disengaged. The steel spear is retracted. After a delay of 100 ticks, the floodgates and the bridge are raised, the door and the floor hatch are opened, and the track stop will be disabled. So the friction, and also disables any dumping. So that's what happens to each of these when they receive an on signal. Everything except for the gear assembly treats on signals and off signals differently, and it treats them idempotently. What does this mean? So it means if you send a bunch of on signals after another, it'll have the same result as if you only sent the first one until you send an off signal. So that signal can be, considered like setting the mode, right? So if we pull this one, and this is going to go from the right to the left, it's going to send another on signal. We see that nothing changes with these, but the gear assembly is no longer disengaged. The gear assembly will treat all signals, on signals or off signals, as if they were toggles. So that's something to keep in mind. Using gears and gears to control things are sort of how we invert signals, for example, and how we will be creating more complicated circuits. For now, we'll just see what happens when we send an off signal. So the off signal turns back on the track stop, closes the door and the hatch, raises the steel spear, the upright trap, and again toggles the gear assembly. And then after a 100 tick delay again, the floodgate will come down and the bridge will lower. And then we can pull this one again, and we'll see that none of these things here change, but then the gear assembly will no longer be disengaged. That's the core part of the lever. How, a lever is not a toggler. It'll send off and on signals depending on the state of the lever at the time it is pulled. Here, underneath this minecart, there is a pressure plate. This pressure plate is linked to this door. So I've set up a route here. Basically, they'll come and put this minecart here and then kick it up back to the pressure plate. As we took this minecart off this pressure plate, the door closed, and we'll watch more closely what happens when someone kicks it up. So as the minecart goes onto the pressure plate, and the pressure plate is actually set up in this mode, so cart weight 1 to any, it'll send a signal that immediately opens the door. When it's removed, after a 99 tick delay, it will send an off signal to the door, removing something from a pressure plate. If the trigger condition remains invalidated for 99 ticks, it'll send an off signal, and the pressure plate will return to its unpressed state. Important to note is that signals are not a persistent thing, but events. So when the lever is in a state, or when a pressure plate is pressed, that's not like a constant stream of information. The door isn't like asking constantly, is the pressure plate still pressed? Are the things still pressed? It's just waiting for signals that will only occur when the lever or the pressure plate changes its state. And yeah, that is basically all there is to know about signals.